is which superhero would you be, and how do you use? How would you use your powers, and would you follow in their path?
As in, I have to pick a superhero from a pre-existing
Yeah.
set
So
of
it's a so
superheroes.
the reason is he said, "What would be your superpower?" And I'd already had that one, so it's like, okay, we've got to put a spin on this. So it's what superhero would you be, like a pre-existing one, but then also like how would you use your powers, and would you be like them, or would you, you know, if you picked a superhero, would you act in the same way, or do you think you'd go and follow another path?
This is going to sound really, I can't even think of the word for it. But do you ever think that basically all superhero powers are kind of the same? Like
Okay,
they're
well,
all
you're going
just
to have to explain that.
they're all just, the power to like be powerful, aren't they? To be more
Yeah,
powerful than others. I mean, I know there's like nuances, like Doctor Strange can do all this, like, you know, time travel stuff, and Batman has a lot of money and gadgets.
that's basically a superpower.
But everything just, well, yeah, I guess the key word is power. And sometimes it kind of feels like, I mean, they're all the same, aren't they?
Yeah, I
Oh,
guess.
that's so bad
No,
to
I see. I
say.
kind of see what you're saying. There's like, it's yeah. I think, I don't know what I would. I think that the okay. So the interesting spin then, I guess, is would you, if you had to pick one that you like, would you follow in their path and be like do what they do, or would you do something else? That's the question. Or would you just
I'm
be standing there as a superhero, like, well, this is pointless, you know?
This is going to sound even worse. I'm desperately trying to think of one that I like. I
Uh,
do go and watch Marvel movies at the cinema.
yeah.
I went to see Thor last weekend,
Nice.
um, and I can appreciate the sort of, yeah, the switching off, quippy action fun.
Yeah.
And I do think the most last couple of Thor films have been directed really well and they're really funny.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't really relate to any of them. Like, I don't
Yeah.
relate to this big canonical kind of good guy versus bad guy. I think I have a bit of an issue with the binary oppositions that are drawn in superhero movies. So I'm here trying
Yeah.
to think, oh, would I be Captain Marvel? Would I be Black Widow? And it's like, no, because none of them are nuanced enough. Like,
Yeah.
um, so I,
You don't have to pick one. That's a perfectly good
I,
answer in itself. That's I think so because we're interestingly, sort of contrary to what you said, I recently I've been more impressed with Marvel films than I think they started. I thought Iron Man was really cool, because that was like the first real massive Marvel movie. And I'm not a massive Marvel fan. I like some of them. I have friends that have seen all of them in order, and like I have friends that watch them in order up to is it Endgame that the kind of the last in the you know I don't know, I can't do that. But I was more impressed with Infinity War and Endgame because I thought the idea of the bad guy in a lot you're right, in a lot of superhero movies the bad guy is like he is trying to be bad, like he knows
yeah,
he's the bad guy, whereas in Infinity War and Endgame he thinks he's doing well, as far as I can tell, he thinks what he's doing is like the quote unquote right thing, for the universe. I was gonna say humanity, but it's kind of like the whole universe, isn't it? So I thought that was more nuanced than maybe some of the more down the line, I don't know, like Captain America or something, where it's like good versus evil. You know, I thought that was more interesting personally, and like there was things like Thor when he met his Thanos, and yeah, when he met him, he just sort of chopped his head off, and it's like it's not, he's not like some what's the word? He's flawed. He just saw him, he got angry, and he just killed him, and it's just like. So I thought there was more nuance there. I don't know whether you agree or not, but I thought that was maybe more nuanced than they have been before.
I think there's definitely an improvement in the last sort of 4 years over the MCU. Like just thinking like the solo Black Widow movie as well, where you get the sense that she's really conflicted.
Yeah.
Um, and you do get the sort of sense of regret of damage that's been caused by their powers, which has been kind of a reoccurring theme, I think, in the Avengers movies
Yeah.
of recently. And I think the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, they show that kind of, that they're a little bit more nuanced in terms of, sort of having this power and sort of doing the greater good, but also, are you sure it's the good thing? And like the destruction that's caused in the wake of battling for good, because you are still fighting, regardless, and you're still destroying buildings and stuff like
Yeah.
that, or people are still getting hurt. So I do think that there's a little bit more meat to them, and they're definitely less kind of. If you watch, say, Thor 2, The Dark World, it really is good guy versus bad guy, and
Yeah.
that's all there is to it. And there's kind of not much depth to the motivation behind either cause. But I do think, it's got a little bit better now. Like even in the most recent Thor film, the bad guy in that, I think he's called like the God
Oh
Destroyer
yeah.
or something. The God
Played by the same guy that plays Batman, which feels a bit strange as well. Yeah. Christian Bale, isn't it?
Christian Bale from American Psycho, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's I thought he was American until like and then I heard him doing a British accent, which ironically I thought was a bit shoddy, and it turns out that's just his normal voice.
He's British.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Pretty.
that either.
Well, now you've made me question it again. I think he is.
Because I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, that's a
Yeah,
bit of
no,
a dodgy
I saw him
accent.
in Le Mans '66, and I was like, that's not the best British accent, but I think that's actually his voice. Maybe he's done
Oh
so many
wow.
American films that he sounds a little bit like he's putting on his own voice now.
Yeah. That's an interesting topic as well. Like, how you kind of assimilate vocalizations and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and you can easily lose like your original voice
If you
and
listen
stuff.
to like Ozzy, he sounds like he's the most brummy sounding American sounding person you'll ever listen to. Like you still, yeah, we hear Sharon, and then but then he has like an American kind of accent, and it's really I don't understand how he's. Yeah, you listen to anyone else in the band, they all sound like they're still from Birmingham. Um,
There's definitely something intoxicating about the American accent, though, because
yeah,
I was there last month. And, when I'm in Germany, I don't end up talking with a German accent.
no, no,
Um, but when I'm in America, that kind of, that, especially I visited some of the more southern and mid states, and they've got
right,
that
yeah,
kind of soft southern drawl, and you just
yeah,
mimic it back. I think because it sounds nice and
yeah,
because we consume so much of it culturally. Do you know what? I'm sorry if this is to NSFW.
it's
You
fine.
can delete it, it's fine. But
No,
have you ever noticed that in British porn they make like American noises? Like there is the
yeah, I mean,
noises people make to enjoy themselves have an American accent.
yeah, I guess it is just kind of it sort of absorb. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that comment. Yeah, my parents watch this. No, it's fine.
Oh
No,
God, sorry.
no, I don't care. No, I see what you mean. Like, the kind of you're right though. Like, there's that kind of we do kind of absorb stuff in that way, like across every platform. Like most British people sing with American accents.
Mhm.
So like it's yeah, it's an interesting kind of concept. I mean, what I was going to ask the question, it feels like it's been kind of derailed in a different. I was going to say a better question for you might have been, given what you've said, if you were to make a superhero movie, what would you do? What would
Um,
be the person, or like, how would you?
I think my favorite aspect of superhero movies, which isn't explored enough, is the contrast of a superhero reacting within our real day to day world.
Right. Okay.
Um, so I would like it to focus more on the kind of like integration side of things, like the difficulties. I think Thor 1 does it really well, where, he's just kind of this completely different being from another universe placed in our strange little reality, and kind of watching like those two worlds bounce off of each other and then react to each other.
Yeah.
I would see more of that and less fight. I'm very sick of superhero action fighting.
Mm.
And this is so boring as well. I would love to have a superhero movie where they like settle things in a different way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Imagine that, because I think this is the issue is you go out in the street and you see people fighting and you go, oh, that's so bad, oh, violence, terrible. But
Yeah.
then in every single mainstream movie, it's sold to you as conflict resolution, as like
Yeah.
the heroic thing to do, the good thing to do. So I would have it would be the most boring superhero movie ever, and maybe like the superhero would be
Well, it depends how defined boring, If I'm sure there are plenty of people that share your sentiment, maybe without even knowing it. It's just got to have a sex scene in it with loads of really English noises just to make up for the just hire a
I
load of
think
Brummies. I'm in Birmingham right now. I'm not just sort of shitting on Birmingham the whole time. That's where I am right now. Uh,
the
yeah,
superhero name would be Chatman,
yeah.
and everything would be resolved by him talking politely to people.
I, I totally think that's feasible until Thor comes along and is like, I think I'm a bit more powerful than you, like,
Mm.
and that's possibly. I agree. I think the concept is interesting though. I agree. It is kind of interesting how it's glorified. I don't know whether there's the interesting argument of whether that translates. It's the typical like will video games make your children violent kind of thing. Will glorifying violence in a movie translate to people resolving things with violence, especially when you take such a movie like a Marvel movie where it's so like what's the word, sort of detached from reality.
Yes.
The question is, would that translate into real life? I don't know.
I
I mean,
don't
that's the
think it's
question. I'm not saying I have the answer.
I don't think the link is as arbitrary as a lot of people like to make
Yeah.
out of, like, oh, you play GTA and suddenly you're going to steal a car and run someone over kind of thing. But I do think it causes, like, there's definitely a desensitization there, and definitely a kind of just that disparity between what you're seeing on screen and then what you're dealing with in real life. And kind of, yeah, even if most people can go and see a Marvel movie and know that using your fists isn't going to solve any conflicts that you come up with in real life, but then you have to kind of wonder how much of these movies and like them putting that kind of action on a pedestal sort of reinforcing um, perhaps like an innate belief that comes from like sort of an evolutionary psychology perspective. It's kind of tapping into those innate feelings of violence, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you're completely right. Like, I really don't think it is as simple as monkey see, monkey do.
I
Um,
don't know.
but yeah, I just think it's interesting, isn't it, that we gain so much pleasure from watching people hurt each other on a screen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think maybe it's it's just a reflection of what we want to see. Like you could there's the it's a kind of a what came first argument of, do we like watching it because we've been sold it and grown up with it, or do we sell it and grow up with it because it's what people like to watch? It's escapism, a lot of it, isn't it? Like it's and you know they resolve things by all these big superhero movie fights and things, and it's like maybe we enjoy that because that's not how we can solve things. Not really. We literally can't throwing fireballs at each other and as much as we'd like to, maybe.
Yeah. I
So
think there's a
maybe it's that.
I think there's a catharsism in, yeah, maybe going and seeing someone beating someone up, because you can be like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do to my boss or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you're definitely right about that, like, um, that it's kind of oh, what's the word? It's like a second-hand form of release.
Oh, like not pseudo. What's when you sort of when it's like when you embody
Uh,
there's a word
there is a word. It
it's
is.
really annoying me now. When
Um,
you by proxy, is that?
Vicarious.
Oh, Vicar. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good song. Um, but yes, no, that's it. Yeah. Proxy. I guess proxy was close. Yeah. Vicarious. That's a very good word as well, isn't it? It's a very like poetic word. There's something about it.
There should definitely be a prog band called Vicarious.
I bet there is. I bet there is. Or I reckon it's that. Or I reckon there's a band that the name just totally doesn't suit called
Yeah.
Vicarious out there. I reckon it's one of the two, but it's probably a prog band. You're probably. And there's probably it's Vicary OVS. There's going to be a V in there and in the as a U because that's
Oh, definitely.
you know. So I was told that the reason for that some bands do that like is to have well not the reason but like I think it might have been churches. Apparently the reason they did it was to get found more easily on like when you type the name in because obviously it sets you aside literally in terms of a search thing. That's what someone told me and I don't know if that's just like something I've believed because it sounds believable or
So it's literally search engine optimization.
maybe. I'm not saying it is and I'm not saying it's that band either. That was just my I don't want to go throw in you
I
know
tell you what, it
um
makes total sense. It makes
yeah.
total sense.
I suppose if
And
you're going to
that's,
call your band churches anyway, you know, or
yeah,
is this another one? Is it called? Is it? Oh, I can't remember the other ones now.
there's Paris.
It is Paris. I thought it
Yeah.
was. Yeah. Okay.
And if you think about it, these are all things that when you search, you wouldn't necessarily get the band.
Yeah.
So they're chucking that letter in to like distinguish it because this is an issue. People search Svalbard and they just get images of an archipelago and stuff
Yeah.
like that and polar bears.
Maybe they should
So,
be searching Svalbard.
yeah.
And then they'll get it. Yeah, we've solved that. Um, with so actually, this goes nicely into something I noticed you kind of someone just fell off my desk. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah.
So that was just a little light. The I noticed you have an interest and you mentioned it to me in sort of in gaming and I thought that was an interesting tie with what you were just talking about in terms of escapism and how you get that from how you could say societally we have this escapist thing within movies where we can kind of disappear for a few hours and enjoy that whatever it is for better or worse. Do you feel when you kind of when it comes to gaming and stuff, do you find that kind of and not just gaming but actually just consuming other media and just these kind of more whether it be gaming or movies or anything that kind of takes your fancy in that realm, do you find that is a form for you of some sort of escapism to kind of disappear for a little while and enjoy something, or is it not like that? How do you kind of
Oh,
experience it?
I live for escapism. It's really weird how, like, the thing I look for in life is to not feel like I'm here right now, to not feel reality. Like,
Yeah,
I am reality avoidant.
yeah.
Um,
Well, no, just as well, there's plenty of things that can help you with that.
but I don't think it's as simple as, like, oh, not liking, a lot of the aspects of your own life and wanting. I think a lot of it is the imagination, and artists and game artists, game developers can create a world that is so preferable. They can create a world that is far more stirring, that's far more emotive, that's far more beautiful. I'd rather live in Skyrim than in Stains, I'd rather look at like these beautifully formed pixels and hear this amazing soundtrack playing and be interacting with dragons than interacting with the bloke on the checkout at Tesco. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like, I guess I think I've always been drawn to fantasy worlds in many elements of life. Like I also love Warhammer and Magic the Gathering and yeah, fantasy fiction as well. But my main aspect for that is gaming, and I live to be immersed in something, and that's my favorite. My favorite feeling is when I'm 100% distracted from what's around me, and I'm
Yeah.
living in this kind of world that has been created. I'm just yeah, I think I love exploring the creativity of others, and the worlds that and the storylines. Like my God, everything that happens to me on a quest is way better than everything that happens to me on a day to day. Like you can some quests are like really philosophical and stuff like that, and I think you can get a lot more out of gaming, and things. I mean, it depends on what game you play. If it's Mario Kart, maybe not so much.
Poor checkout man's playing Mario Kart, like not knowing what he could be, what life
Oh,
he could be living. I'm going to pick up on that. Checkout man did nothing to deserve that.
oh
Checkout
no.
man, even the Tesco checkout man. Anyway, yeah, no, I think because the reason I asked that is because I noticed the games that you, and funny actually, because I saw someone asked on your story about MTG, which I didn't realize was I for a second was like, because I didn't know what I was like. Is that like metal guitar? Is that like, I was like, what does that mean? And then I went through a few more stories, like, oh, that makes more sense now. Um, but yeah, the reason I asked about the escapism and is that it seems you were drawn to like the fantasy side of these things, whether it be like a video game or like a physical game or something. So that was kind of why I was interested in the escapism, because you know it's like you said, it's different to playing sort of Mario Kart. Where do you think that kind of desire for sort of immersion in that experience kind of comes from?
Um,
It's a
I
tough
think
question. Sorry.
no, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's comes from a sort of childlike sense of wonder. I think my first experience, because my family that I grew up with weren't particularly into like fantasy, like they weren't into Lord of the Rings or anything like that. They were bored of the rings. They were, but like,
I can tell
so
you've
I
used
didn't.
that pun a few too many times.
I know, yeah. It came out my mouth, and then I sort of hated myself. But it's so good.
Yeah, it
You got to
works.
just cram it in at every opportunity. That's my philosophy with puns. You just
Yeah.
have your little library and just fire them at people whenever you can.
Oh, I mean,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but like, yeah, I didn't. It wasn't the case. I know a lot of people, you know, they grew up with that. They grew up reading Lord of the Rings. They grew up reading Terry Pratchett, and they developed this kind of love of fantasy from a young age. Um, I didn't really have that. And my first experience, I think, for me, of fantasy worlds would have been going to Alton Towers and seeing Rise Like Nemesis, which at the time had like a comic book, it had a backstory, it had a monster, it had a soundtrack. And I was like transfixed. I was like, wow, you know, this is like the most immersive, fascinating, otherworldly thing I've ever seen. And then I think it kind of spiraled from there, like getting into theme parks and theme park lore, of which, again, a lot of theme parks, maybe not so much the UK, but ones in Germany and stuff, are all heavily inspired by like fantasy and sort of
Cool.
dark, gothic dragon stuff. And I think that was where my love for it came from. And everything, every aspect, like it's like the Venn diagram, the overlaps are just so huge. It may as well just be one big sphere for
Yeah.
RPG gaming, theme parking, power metal, Magic the Gathering, Warhammer. It's all just beautiful, fascinating lore and imagination. And I think it gives me a kind of childish feeling that I didn't really have in my childhood. So maybe that's where the fascination comes from.
Yeah. That kind of that I can see why there's so many. It's like you've almost in your kind of interests, you found an interest, and then there's this really convenient other one that is so neatly tied to what you like, which is has another one that's tied to, you know, when you're saying about power metal, and then that's so inherently tied to like to that kind of fantasy. There's something quite grandiose about power metal, and again it ties in, and like you say, theme parks again, it's like it's all not quite other. Well, some of it's literally otherworldly, but even when you're experiencing it in the moment, it's quite. It has that escapist feel to it, which is really cool. But it's like you've picked your realm of escapism in a very specific way. And I think when you talk about immersion, it's like you've immersed yourself in it's in it's like it's almost like you've picked a world someone else, like alternate reality you maybe could have picked to immerse themselves in some other totally other sort of separate thing where you have a different genre of music, a different I don't know what a theme park, a different attraction to go to, which is quite cool. So
Like
yeah,
you,
because I was going to say you're the first person I've met with such an interest in theme parks and roller coasters, because I like them, but I think something happened at the age of about like, I think like early 20s, where I went on one. I was like, I feel a bit sick now. Like, I was fine with them when I was younger, but then I went on once, and it's always this. I can do like the more kind of speed based ones, but then when I get onto something that like where it's a bit more corkscrewy and and like the seats spin, I'm just like, oh guys, I start to struggle. I think I almost get in my head and I almost feel sick before I'm even on the ride a little bit. You know, do you have any like? Also, what would you do if you suddenly started? If one day you turn up to a theme park and you realize you've got a fear of heights or something, what happens next? Like, sorry, it's a load of questions there.
oh, as in like, what if I suddenly developed a fear of heights?
If you turn up to a theme park and suddenly developed a fear of heights, do you think you'd still be able to go on the roller coasters anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fear is what makes it rewarding.
Okay.
Like I'm not, I've ridden 729 different roller coasters around the world. And
Wow.
if they didn't, if I was fully numb to being 300 feet in the air, I wouldn't do it. Do you
Yeah,
know
I
what I mean?
suppose that kind of would ruin it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, the adrenaline is the reason. And I mean, I'm not, as soon as it gets going, I'm not scared. But when every single time when you're going up a massive lift hill or about to launch or something to a really great height, of course I have that anticipation. Of course I have the, nervous butterflies in my tummy. But I think you learn as a roller coaster enthusiast to translate that into excitement. And I will tell you something now, like I'm part of a huge community of roller coaster enthusiasts, and so many of them were scared of roller coasters as a kid. I was scared of roller coasters as a kid, and then I think when I was about 12 years old, I overcame my fear and I went on Nemesis. Whoa! And I think it's that sense of achievement and being able to be a bit intimidated by something, but then to prove it to yourself that you can do it, that makes it rewarding. But then on top of that, you have the whole law and everything as well. And then going back to what you said about rides making you feel sick, I'm going to say this now as well. Like I've ridden many, many different roller coasters. Not all of them are good. I'd probably say maybe like a very small percentage of them are, and a lot of them will just like be a bit sickly or be a bit old and knackered and rough and things like that. It's all about sort of chasing the new ones and the latest designs and the latest ways and innovations, like the roller coaster development kind of side is super innovative. So they're always thinking of like new ways to create new sensations. So yeah, that's kind of what it's about for me. It's like, oh, what's next? How's this going to feel? But yeah, so I would say if it's made you feel sick, you weren't riding the right one.
Yeah, I think you just got to pick the ones for you, haven't you? So I've got three questions, all roller coaster related, that have come up from that. They're like quick fire. So what's the what do people? I don't know if there will be an answer to this, so you're going to have to forgive me if there isn't. What is the sort of popularly, or what's the consensus on what is the best roller coaster? If you had to say across the board, if you had to pick one to represent the roller coaster of planet Earth, what do you think that would be? And the other two, kind of two sides of the same coin. What's been the best one that you thought was going to be really bad, and what's been the worst one that you thought was going to be really good?
Oh, okay. Well, the consensus among roller coaster enthusiasts is that Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point is the greatest roller coaster in the world.
Cool.
However, it was not open when I visited Cedar
Oh,
Point,
no.
so I haven't ridden it yet. But there's the people who made Steel Vengeance. Sorry, I'm trying to not get too technically and nerdy with this.
No, get as technical and nerdy as you like.
The people who built Steel Vengeance have built many different roller coasters around the world, and they've also built one in Poland called
Cool.
Zadra, which, I mean, it's not, the same, but it's similar. And that is my favorite roller coaster. But I have not ridden Steel Vengeance, and the general consensus among enthusiasts is that that is the best roller coaster in the world. But I would say Zadra is definitely one of the best. It's certainly my favorite.
Nice.
And that's at a park called Energylandia in Poland. The second question was,
Well, it's kind of the
roll,
two of the same question. It's the one you enjoyed the most that you thought you weren't going to like, and then vice versa, the opposite, the one that you didn't like but you thought you were going to enjoy.
so the one that I really liked that I was fully anticipating to hate was a really recent one. When I was in America, I went to a park called King's Dominion,
Mhm.
and I rode Intimidator 305, which is known as one of the most intense roller coasters on the planet in terms of positive G-force.
Cool.
So like it's got these special restraints because so many people black out or grey out and lose their vision on it, because
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, it's one of those rides they wouldn't build it now.
Mm.
It's very much an anomaly.
Yeah.
It is absolutely relentless to ride. But because I prefer negative G-force, where you're like floating or dropping, as opposed to like being slammed back in your seat,
Mm.
I was a bit anxious about this one, and I had lost my vision on other rides and not really enjoyed that sensation. So I was like there thinking, oh, Intimidator 305, oh, I'm going to hate it. So I actually read up about the Hick maneuver, which is what fighter jet
I was
pilots
gonna say, is
do.
that when they like flush the blood into their head with the breathing technique?
Yeah, and you like tense your leg muscles to prevent your blood from going
Oh,
all the way to your legs. I read
yeah,
up about it and learned how to do that so that when it hit the points that I knew were going to be the high G-force spikes,
yeah.
I did that, and I lost my vision a little bit, but not too much. Everyone else I was with, yeah,
This must have made for a really poor, the photos in the that they get. That must have made for a really poor photo. You kind of like tensing up all the way around.
I mean, I think those roller coaster photos are always super unflattering anyway.
Yeah, to be fair,
So
I don't think you're ever going to get sort of, like front cover model quality like photos out of one of them.
never going to end up on the gram, is it?
No, no. But
Yeah,
yeah.
those angles, those faces, skin
Saying
flapping
that, I
about.
think I have one on my Instagram somewhere. With me and my friends. But yeah.
I mean, they definitely can be fun. Those photos,
Very expensive.
yes. But everything at a theme park is. Um,
True.
to go back to Intimidator 305, I was, yeah, fully anticipating to hate it, learnt the hit maneuver, and genuinely, Intimidator 305 cured my depression for 2 minutes for like the duration of the ride,
That's not
because
bad.
it's so intense and it's so relentless, and it doesn't ride like any other roller coaster I've ridden, which
Hmm.
after you've ridden so many, you sort of notice similarities and it gets a bit samey. But with this one, it really was something else. And it's like having your mind just blanked for 2 minutes.
Hmm.
And I loved that. And it absolutely blew me away. And I was expecting to hate it. So Intimidator 305, one of my favorites. And then one that I was hoping that would be really good, that was really bad, is Fly at Phantasialand in Germany. It's their latest roller coaster. It's like a launched coaster, so you don't go up a hill to gain momentum. You're magnetically
Okay.
propulsed.
Uh, like a bullet train kind, like the those trains they're building. Yeah, the magnet rail things. Yeah.
Yeah, so it like
Ideal.
fires you along a big straight bit of track
What a
really
trip for
fast.
work. Yeah.
And this one you're in a flying position, so you're like fully tilted face down and stuff. It's just super uncomfortable. Like the area looks great, the theming is great, the story of the ride is great, but I just had all that pressure like on my chest, and it wasn't a very comfortable ride for me. So sadly, that was the most disappointing one.
Uh, I'll have to send them a trip advisor. Oh well. The so kind of what I found kind of interesting from what you just said is that I know you sort of jokingly you said, "Oh, cure my depression for 2 minutes," kind of thing. What I think, like, because obviously a lot of these, it's not escapist things necessarily, but things that you immerse yourself in whether it be sort of quote unquote escapist or not, a lot of people use as a positive way of kind of I don't want to say distracting from the problems in life, because that kind of sounds like uh it's diminishing the importance of what some of these things are to people like yourself and to plenty of others. But do you find like if you go on a roller coaster you really enjoy, or if you play a game you really enjoy, or you're busy writing a piece of music or something, do you find that in that if you're having a hard time in particular, when you snap in and out of those kind of things you're doing, do you find there's a lasting kind of positive effect afterwards, or do you find it's very much I feel like I'm always answering the question myself a bit, but I feel like if I were to go on a roller coaster, like you said, it's very exciting for like 2 minutes or so. When you get off the roller coaster, do you feel that lasting sensation of, oh, this has made me, or does it feel like a bit of a snap back to reality? And the same with, your music or gaming or whatever. Does it feel kind of on and off like that? Or do you feel like a sort of almost kind of positive hangover from those things?
I'm constantly like crashing and
Very much.
yeah,
It's a
sort of
roller
like yeah,
coaster graph for you.
yeah, like so I have very extreme highs and lows
Mm,
in my life, and I think that's because I'm chasing the extreme highs to overcompensate for the extreme lows.
mm,
Sometimes depression gets so bad that you don't even enjoy your favorite roller coaster, as I found out.
mm,
I had a really bad time in 2019, and I went to Poland to ride Zadra again, and I didn't even like literally. It was like I couldn't even feel it, because you know what it's like when you're really, really stuck in depression. You don't feel anything, and
mm,
like nothing works. No distractions work. All you can do is like wait,
mm,
um, and you can fight as much as you can. Like I hate to be kind of for it to sound so defeated, but I think it is true. Like you can fight and fight and fight to make things better for yourself, but and you can change, as much as you can externally, and it will impact, internally. But there's there's no way of switching the depression off.
mm,
It's pretty relentless, and it does always come back. There's definitely been times, yeah, like after I rode Intimidator 305, I was like, I felt good for a nice period of time afterwards. Or like if we've been working on some new Svalbard songs and I've been immersed in that creativity, and I think if it's rewarding, you do come away with a sort of a bit of a glow that lasts.
mm.
But as soon as you go in expecting the glow and expecting to feel better, that's when it becomes harder to feel good from the things that you want to make you feel good, because the expectation almost creates a desperation, which sort of makes it a lot harder to lift yourself out, because you need it too much. If you know what I mean, it's like you need the escapism too much, or you need the happiness too much. I don't know. Sorry.
No, no, that's a good. I see what you mean. Like, I think the um, what you were kind of saying about what I think is particularly true and particularly difficult is the less happy you are fundamentally, kind of you obviously you can kind of seek those the highs because you feel like you're sort of craving that, when sometimes ironically the mundane day to day is what you need just to. But of course, like it's easy, it's the same when you look at like dopamine release and addiction, when you, and I'm not sort of comparing depression and addiction necessarily, different obviously things, but like, when you, I don't know, for example, when you start a bad habit, it's drinking or something, I don't know, and then you get a certain amount out of drinking, a small amount, but then the next time you need to come back, you need to enjoy it that bit more. And it's funny going back to what you said a lot earlier. How you said we're not all that simple, but I think then like as a society we haven't been trained so well in understanding how we do work. Like, I'm not saying I know everything. I for sure don't. I find it interesting, the kind of study of like things like neurochemistry, and I'm not saying I understand a fat lot of it, like I find the whole thing interesting. But my argument would actually be, I think we're simpler than perhaps it's made out to be, but we just really are not taught how to, as a society, I don't just mean as individuals, but like societally, we're not taught how to understand ourselves that well. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Maybe you can disagree or you like. I'm just that's just my my take. Is I think we're actually fundamental. I think it's kind of quite often. I think what people think is that it's input and then a trillion things happening and then output in terms of like input into our brain, and then our brain does this massive conundrum thing, and then we feel how we feel or we do what we do. I think it's input, two or three things, and then output. And I know that sounds a little bit like, I know our brains are very complex things, but I think when you break it down to what fundamentally happens at the other side, I think it's kind of like, I think if you look at the relationships between certain things, I think it's simpler, but I just don't think we're good at understanding or controlling those responses. I don't know. That's a big explanation for someone who hasn't studied it an awful lot, but that's my
There's a
opinion
really good
anyway.
there's a really good quote from the Manic Street Preachers,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
and it's everybody's taking drugs because it makes their governing easier. And I
Makes it
think
what easier.
there's
Sorry, I just had a car horn honk out the front of my house.
oh sorry, everybody's taking drugs because it makes their governing easier. And
Oh,
I do
okay.
think there's this kind of case to be made with addiction, especially with alcohol addiction, in that it's kind of peddled into, especially Western society, as like a bit of a sort of solution, a harmless solution to people's problems and stuff, because it, yeah, it's like if people are in that kind of state or in a kind of chemically dependency state, they're less likely to overthrow the government. Do you know what I mean? Or they're less. I think it's about, yeah, there's definitely, it depends like from what angle you want to look at it, from like a kind of structuralist point of view of these things in society predating like existing before we come into the world, and we're stepping into this world where um, we think it's input, massive processes, and then output, when really it isn't, and it's the kind of the structure that's imparting that onto us, or whether it's kind of more of a personally learned behavior. I think there's definitely like the brain's ability to overcomplicate everything, or something like, even today, this is so not on the point, but it's an example.
I
I was doing a lot of statistics stuff at work today, and every time I do statistics, even though I did statistics as part of my degree, I look at the stat and then I'm like, nah, and then I check it and I check it and I check it and I do all these different ways just to make sure, and then I feel this wave of like surprise that the stat I got was right the first time,
Mm,
because like it's just so ingrained to kind of doubt everything at base level, and then to kind of assume that everything is more complicated than it is.
mm. Yeah, it's weird. There's kind of the it depends. Yeah, I sort of I agree. I agree on like um I agree and disagree. Like I agree with you on the, because I kind of just said it and then you've just said similar thing back to me, and now for me to say I disagree is kind of a bit like kind of a bit contrary. But I think it's, although maybe we are agreeing in a roundabout sense. I think there's the, on a personal level, I think we're simpler in terms of how we, if you look at evolution, in terms of how we sort of respond to certain things, certain inputs. But then I think on a societal level, you could argue maybe it's the opposite, where there's loads happening that is out of our control. You know, there's loads of things that kind of I don't know where I'm even going with this. But yeah, it's I think either way, I think the kind of the general understanding of like ourselves could be massively improved. And what you said is possible. You could maybe it's a sort of keeping us, you know, keeping us, stopping us from overthrowing the government and, you know, and all of that business. I
I
do
think we
wonder
have,
with the amount that people are struggling nowadays, how much longer this particular government has. But you know, maybe we'll just
I,
live with it. Who knows?
I do think there is a kind of real tendency to, yeah, in like society to avoid knowing the self. Like that's kind of discouraged, isn't it?
Yeah.
To just sort of to really um, accept yourself and understand the reality of yourself, unless that self happens to fit in with like what's acceptable right now.
Yeah, it's like understand the way. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think the internet has really helped because giving a platform for people to talk about their differences has enabled resonance, which helps people to, understand things about themselves when they can see it in others.
Yeah, I think there's I mean we could go into the pros and cons of the internet to this would be a very long podcast if we went into that. But yeah, I think I don't know whether I'd argue it's being a force for good or evil in the grand scheme of things. I think it's, in terms of that connectivity, it's like, I think, and again, I don't know if this is just down to how we're hardwired, but I think we're somewhat doomed internet wise and AI wise because I think it's kind of in our nature to. I heard a really interesting. I can't remember where I heard it now. Someone said that it's just a whole sort of what's the word, like mind game, sort of not conspiracy but just like a thought experiment, is that what if the thing that causes the collapse of society, and that is AI, and then then we just end up rebuilding. They say, oh, they sort of the pyramids aren't, they sort of, were they built by us or were they built by aliens and stuff? And then someone said, like, what if the nature of humans is to progress to the point where we develop AI that then destroys us all and leaves some remnants, and then we just build up again? Weird conspiracy theory conversation, but I can't remember where I heard that now. But I thought that was an interesting little thought experiment. I had What I was going to do. I'm going to ask you something a bit more musical for the musically inclined.
Okay.
I think there'll be plenty of people like, I just want to know about your guitar, like, but no, I think I'd feel I hadn't done it in entire service if I didn't ask you at least a small question. And there's actually something that I'm intrigued myself to ask about. Was So when I look at writing music, I'm not very good at. I'm I think I'm good at writing very involved parts, like a busy guitar riff or like a distinct, maybe like vocal melody or something. I'm happy with how I can do that. But I notice a lot of your music has a lot of atmosphere to it, where the distinct parts they're not all in the forefront necessarily. They're just contributing to an atmosphere. And when you have enough of them doing the right thing, you get this really cool kind of, and it ties in with you're kind of building this world. So I guess my sort of question is, how do you go about constructing, as a band or just individually, how do you go about like constructing these kind of atmospheres, and these kind of worlds within songs where not every part is necessarily its own, like, if you take like, I don't know, a Metallica riff or something, like that's the part that is like the thing. How do you go about writing stuff where you build that kind of atmosphere?
I've always thought of myself as kind of a reactionary musician in the sense that I'm never going to write a riff and that is the riff. It's always four guitar parts, it's like interplaying with each other, and you'll have one, but as soon as I'm playing one, I'm hearing the next thing on top of it, and then I'm hearing the next thing on top of that. So I work in layers, especially with Noctule, my solo project. And I've always likened it to kind of being possessed. I've never had a guitar lesson in my life. I was completely self-taught. So I don't know. I can't sit there and go, oh, this note goes with this scale and this chord kind of thing. I don't know anything about that. I just sit there and let it come to me. And you get the feeling. It's the most magical feeling in the world when, say, I've been playing one riff and then in my head I hear the other part, and it's like, yeah, like I say, it's like being possessed. It just comes to me from somewhere else. And then as soon as it's like a kind of unlocking sensation. As soon as that's unlocked, things just keep going and they keep unlocking. And then I try and get them all down as fast as I can while they're in my brain. I really envy people like Tobias Sammet from Avantasia who can sit there and construct a song so like meticulously. Mine is definitely a kind of lots of layers. It's like a big cake. It's just lots of layers. There it is, you know. With Svalbard, it's usually like, I mean, at the moment, so Liam and I are working on stuff together, and either he and I will come in with a bass line riff, and then not like a bass line, a bass line.
Right. Okay. I know. Yeah, I know. There are so many. It's like whenever you're talking about like the major part of the song. No, not the major chord, like the important bit. You know, like the key part. No, not the key. The important bit. And it's just like you can't talk about anything like without. Yeah. I do
Yeah.
because I teach guitar. That's like what my job. And the amount of times I'll be saying something and I'll say like the word major or key, or I'll accidentally say a string instead of a fret, and I'm like no, and then they do exactly what I say, but like I didn't mean to say what I say. Sorry. Anyway, carry on. So,
Oh, no. It's yeah, it's a funny one. Like and you find that as well. Like when you're constructing songs, and you're like, my version of 3 bars is 2 versions of your bars. So you play 2.5 and I play 3. It's like, yeah, the communication in music is hilarious at the best of times.
drum talks a bit.
But we've been, yeah, we write together, and I'm definitely like reactionary. Like I'm the icing that goes on top of the bass line riff. Like that's how I'll hear chords, and then I'll hear like the lead melody over the top. And that's when I know whether it's a keeper or not. Like if Liam or I have got some chords together, but I'm not hearing any melody over the top, it's like,
Yeah.
onto the scrap heap you go.
Do you ever revive pieces from the scrap heap, or is that kind of very much been and gone?
Yeah, been and gone.
Yeah,
Very,
that's fair enough. Yeah, it's such hard work to try and it's for so little reward a lot of the time trying to recover some of these. I always think I always try to, because I'm always just like I'm sure I heard something in it, but I do wonder, could I just spend my time better just doing another thing, just writing
yeah.
something else? I realized as well. I totally forgot to mention we have two things in common in terms of small world moments. So the first is actually were you just talking about your bass player from Svalbard? Is that who were you just saying that you write
Oh
for?
no, I was talking about Liam, the
Oh,
guitarist.
sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, because I heard you mention bass, but then you're talking about bass as an important
I,
one. But I, funnily enough, like because I bumped into him when we played a gig in Bristol, um, at the Griffin in Bristol. Um,
oh, okay. So
so
Matt, our bass player, who
yeah, I never
works
got
in
his
the
name or
Griffin.
anything. I just remember him saying that he was your bass player. Oh, that's cool. And then the other one is actually we played at the exact same time as you at Bloodstock last year. So we were on the New Blood stage, or I'm not in the band anymore, but I was playing with the band on the New Blood stage at the same time you were playing the main stage. So small world.
Which band? Which band was
Insurgent
that?
is the name of the band.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, we just we got through the Metal to the Masses thing last year. But yeah, I remember I forgot to mention that because it's kind of a bit of a small world
Yeah.
moment, isn't it? So
Yeah, I think everyone has had some sort of experience in the Griffin. Like that place
yeah,
is such a hub for like underground metal. It's
yeah,
great. And I'm always really jealous that Matt gets to work there,
cool
because
place.
it sounds super fun. But yeah, small world indeed.
Yeah. So there's kind of one more. I've funnily enough, in a very roundabout kind of way, we've actually kind of covered quite a lot of the things that I'd written down. By in no means in the order that I expected to. We've actually kind of gone over a lot of. I'm actually kind of somewhat surprised that we've somehow managed to do that. So I have two more things that I had written down. One, I'm interested to hear what you think. So when it comes to writing, with because you write with Kerrang, right? That's
Yeah.
yeah. So when it comes to sort of in terms of this, it kind of ties in and kind of doesn't. I've noticed there's a tendency now, and I don't know whether this is a good thing or not. For I feel like a lot of this might not. You might, I guess, you experience the other side of this. You might not find this to be the case. I feel like there's a lot of people supporting each other's bands, which is great. Like supporting the mates' bands and supporting like up and coming bands and being positive about them. But the amount of times I've heard someone say this band is like the next XYZ, And I don't just mean from like bloggers and reviewers. I mean just like from their mates and stuff. And they'll be bigging up their mates' bands as if they're like the thing. And I'm like, I get that you want to be positive, but I feel like because I feel like we live in a world where we feel the need to be uh there's a lot of almost flattery, and like we feel the need to be almost nice to a false degree about things. And I think there's people are afraid to say they don't like certain music anymore. Like I feel um I feel like there's this tendency just to say that people like all sorts of music. And there have been people I've had on the podcast where I like them as I'm more interested in them as a person than I am in their music. It doesn't mean I don't like the music, but obviously everyone has their taste. It's like if I were to have loads of I don't know, like hip hop artists on my podcast, it's like I would probably admire them all as people, but like I wouldn't really know where to start with the music. What's your take on the kind of if whether you agree or not, I suppose, on whether people are maybe a bit afraid just to be honest and say, I like this, I don't like that, but respect you anyway.
I think thanks to social media and the internet, people are reluctant to make a firm statement
Mm,
nowadays. Well, no, it goes two ways. They're either totally hell bent on making a firm statement, and like then they get the association of being, some sort of troll in their mum's
mm,
basement, when really they, dependent on what they're saying, they might just not like a band or not really like, yeah, a piece of music, which is totally valid. I think it's probably comes from a fear of reactions, in the sense of if you come out and say, oh, I don't like this band, or I wasn't digging this, the fear of then all the negativity that's going to get put back on you,
mm,
because fans on the internet can be very defensive and very much trying to change the minds of people who aren't into it, rather than just accepting that it's called personal taste for a reason.
mm,
It's your taste, it's not theirs. I think it's also to do with like using platforms and using your voice. I think people are reluctant to use their voice on social media to their followers to spread negativity.
mm,
So they tend to focus in on what they do like, but to a point where it can seem like overhype, perhaps. Because they're just talking about the same thing that they love all the time,
mm,
rather than going, like I felt guilty when I did that Ask Me Anything thing.
mm,
And someone asked what I thought of the latest Carcass records.
mm.
And I gotta be honest, not into the latest Carcass record.
Yeah,
It just doesn't grab me, really. I find it a bit boring.
yeah,
But
yeah, fair enough.
saying that out loud feels like, oh, it feels so wrong to like, use a public like space to declare your dislike of something. I think there's this, yeah, maybe perhaps a bit of intolerance towards criticism
Mm,
within certain music scenes, and people love within music, they love to withhold this illusion of like, oh, everyone's in it, everyone's best friends, and
mm,
everyone's in the bands together, and they all love each other, and they all love each other's bands. And it's like sometimes I'll see like people interacting with me on social media, and if you were to read their comments, you think, wow, they must be really close. Yeah, they must be like best of friends. And it's like, nah, this is it. Those
I,
comments that you see publicly, that's it. It doesn't go any deeper.
I think there comes because the music industry is somewhat closed in some ways, in terms of, I've always felt like it's a little bit of a sort of big kids club, in that like it feels like you got to sort of step into that a little bit sometimes to get involved. And I think people are proud. I know I'm not going to name anyone, but actually a few people do come to mind when I think of, they will name drop, like not even just like famous people, just like people in the industry. I've heard lots of name drops. I'm sure I've been guilty of it myself, but I try not to. But like I'm sure I've heard, I can name a few, and actually like I'm not going to obviously, but I can name a few probably quite like well-known people where I hear them on various platforms name dropping folks, but you can tell it comes from a place of wanting to be a part of it, or at least wanting to seem to be a part of it. And I like, for example, what prompted me to ask that question to you was partly the latest couple of Architects songs. Um, they're really not for me. I don't think they're bad. I think they're a great band, and I don't think the songs are bad. Like I don't think much music that gets put out on a major label is going to be particularly bad. But it's just not really what I'm into. Like I feel like it's kind of maybe lost a bit of an edge on what they had before. But I'd even be nervous to say that to some in some circles. Not because I have any ill will towards any of them. I think they're all very talented and like, but I'm just not massively into it. And I've seen people kind of sharing it. People that I know maybe aren't massively into architects, almost just to be part of the hype. Um,
Mm.
and I kind of, yeah, that I found that I just find it a little bit. I think we need a bit more. What's the word? Not maybe honesty, but just like transparency. In terms of like just being. I think it's like it makes me think of in Monty Python when he says you're unique, all of you, and then they all repeat back, we are unique. I can't remember the line exactly, but uh, I think Monty
Yeah.
Python becomes more and more relevant as time goes on, to be honest.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. It was like a crystal ball.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's the amount of Simpsons. You've seen the Simpsons. The amount of times they predicted the future. That's scary.
Yeah.
They've done Donald Trump and they've done all sorts. I think. I'm sure they. I think they've done so many episodes that you could probably get the rest of humanity on a few seasons of The Simpsons. But
I was watching the Pretzel Wagon episode on my lunch break today,
okay,
and the sort of xenophobic bit where the investorette ladies go to buy their pitta van, and
right.
they're like, and they speak in the Greek. The chef is speaking in the Greek of what the food is, and then there's the American lady like, no, think of them as crunch patties, and I was like, this is literally street food. They predicted street food, where you take these kind of amazing food from different cultural places and then just totally like Americanize it and stuff like that. So in every Simpsons episode, there is a cultural like resonance for now. And it's crazy to think that that episode came out, what, 20 years ago. So it's, yeah, big fan.
Yeah, there are a couple ones that creep me out. I think it was with Donald Trump where like they even synced up a bit of footage where like he's doing the same thing as in the episode. Like this is someone saw this coming. Like either the Simpsons are really causing trouble or like or the other way around. But yeah, so I have one more kind of thing and this is a thing I find interesting across the board with music in terms of how it affects you sort of creatively and otherwise. You mentioned to me that you're kind of into the gym for sort of keeping you sane and keeping things going. Do you find that has, or maybe I think the answer is probably yes, but maybe how do you find that impacts your kind of not just creativity, but like headspace in terms of having that sort of physical exercise alongside doing something that's quite creatively strenuous mentally.
I think every musician or anyone who works in anywhere creative tends to suffer from crippling self doubt all the time. And I definitely do. I definitely feel like I'm not good enough, imposter syndrome, everything I do is crap. I'm currently working like in a very high pressure new creative job as my day job. And I'm just in tears every day because I think I'm not good enough and that I can't do it. And this is why I go to the gym after work every day, because that is something I can do. And it always makes me feel calmer because it's like a physical release. I was thinking about it the other day actually when I was like stretching on the mat. I was like, it's basically a manual release button for serotonin. It's like, oh, it's not coming naturally. I'm going to have to manually release it by moving around for an hour. But yeah, that's the thing I always tell myself. You're not always going to feel happier after leaving the gym, but you will always feel calmer. And that is something I seek, especially when I'm constantly beating myself up about not being a good enough musician, not being a good enough social media editor in my day job, not being, a good enough lyricist, or all these different things. I definitely feel the weight of the pressure of expectation. And I think a lot of artists do as well. So the gym is a way that the only person setting those expectations is you. And then you can achieve that and meet that. And then feel definitely calmer about yourself. Like, oh, I didn't get that presentation done today, but I did run 2 miles. So
Yeah,
at least there's that.
yeah. I always feel like whatever I do in the day, if I do some exercise, I've been a bit bad with it recently. Like I'm really into, like I really enjoy rock climbing. Like I've only been doing it for about a year or so. Like I'm not, I feel like I'm quite naturally, um, more acrobatic than I may appear. Like I don't know if I should come with a warning sign or something, but like I enjoy it because I can. I don't. The gym's not so much for me because I find that mentally I like to be sort of challenged in terms of figuring things out as well. I did a lot of martial arts as a kid, and sort of as a young adult, and I enjoyed the like it's physically difficult, but I think it might be maybe it's because my brain's a bit lazy, and if all I'm focusing on is the physical difficulty, my brain will be like, no. Whereas if I've got like a challenge, like oh, you gotta it sounds like you gotta punch the other person, but you know what I mean? Like you gotta figure things out and respond in the moment. Then I can engage with it a bit more. But I've always found I feel better creatively, even on the day if I exercise. And longer term, obviously, it just has a lot of those benefits. And I think it's maybe again, we talk about understanding ourselves. I think it's something that is understated as and how important it is, probably particularly in creative industries. I don't know if it's maybe highlighted because people can get very obsessive over music and things, and actually to a detriment where they're not focusing on health or mental health or whatever other things. It's so easy to think, oh, I'm not good enough at songwriting, so I need to spend all my time doing that. It's like you'll probably get better at songwriting as well if you exercise or if you find that other pursuit. I think what I found interesting about listening to or sort of looking into you from what you'd said to me was it's like it sounds like you've got a really good balance of I don't want to say work and play because it's not like but finding finding a balance in your interests and having a wide range of things that intrigue you. I think that's maybe a lost art among some musicians, possibly. I don't know what your take is on that, but it seems the case to me anyway.
I do think I'm very grateful to have other areas of life that inspire me, and other hobbies that
Mm.
I do, because if you rely solely on music and all of your sense of self-worth is derived from playing a great gig where things can go wrong and it's not simply within your control, or whether you have the ability to write a good new song and stuff like that, and creativity can't be forced. So I think if you put all your eggs in the music basket, that's definitely a lot of pressure, and if anything, can be detrimental, to your music and the things you create. So I am definitely, it's a deliberate choice to sort of see what else inspires me out in the world. But in terms of balance, there
I
is
was
no
about to say
balance.
as well, like balance might seem a bit like that. I'm just saying it seems balanced. I'm not, I know very full well that things can seem more balanced than they are on the outside.
Can I give you a snapshot?
Okay,
I
go
got
on.
home from work because I had to commute some far away yesterday. I got home from work at 10 o'clock at night. I
Mhm.
got up at 6 o'clock this morning. I've been working till 5:30. We've got this call, and then I've got to write something for Kerrang, which will
Okay,
probably take me till about midnight. And then I
nice.
have to get up early and go down, travel couple hundred miles to rehearsal,
Wow.
for the weekend. Yeah, it literally never stops. I'm constantly working
Yeah.
and constantly busy. And it does get really lonely, like, because a lot of the things I do, like writing or social media editing, or even just writing solo riffs and stuff like that, involves sitting on your own in front of a computer. So I feel really like socially maladjusted as well at the moment.
Mm.
Have to really like force myself to be like, remember to have some human interaction today.
You know,
Um,
my what you should try. Have you done Twitch at all?
yeah,
Because I've started doing it again. I've started like just playing guitar on Twitch, and I'm always astounded by that. I really like it, and I need to make myself do it more because um like it forces me if I set a schedule like I have to sit and play guitar or write music or practice whatever for a certain few hours in the time that I say I'm going to do it. And obviously, when you're on Twitch, not only are you accountable because like you're on camera and you're doing the thing you're doing, so there's no checking your phone, or you can, but no one's going to watch that. And also there are people there, so it feels sociable. So I don't know whether you've looked into that at all, but I find that really enjoyable, sitting down and writing music on Twitch. I
So
think
I
that's
did,
fun. I
I
don't know
did.
if I just missed out. If you do you do this all the time?
No, not at all. I started streaming playing Elden Ring on
Ooh,
Twitch, but I'm not very good at Elden Ring, and
yeah,
I quickly became aware that I have more fun when I'm losing myself in the game on my own and running around doing the stupid things I like to do in the game, as
yeah,
opposed to kind of meeting an objective and entertaining people, because
yeah,
I definitely, again, I feel the weight of expectation. It's the same as when we're on stage and I'm constantly like, is this good enough for the people who have made the effort to come and watch us? Same thing with my stream. I'm like, is this good enough for the people who have bothered to come and watch it? In terms of playing guitar or writing a song on stream, it's like such a private process to me,
yeah, yeah.
um, to be like possessed, so I call it, by the ideas, that I feel that doing that in front of an audience, it's almost like, I mean, the thought makes me uncomfortable, which probably means it's a good thing, because
Maybe.
that's the key, isn't it, to step out of your comfort zone. Maybe one day I will give it a try, but I'm also very self-conscious of the fact that I'm not a very good guitar player. So people like come on and be like, oh, can you play Master of Puppets? And I'll be like, no.
I get requests all the time, and I just say no, sorry, I don't do requests. I'm just doing
Ah,
basically the way I look at it is I'm gonna sit there and play guitar, and I'm gonna write music, whatever. I might as well just turn the camera on and just do it.
yeah.
That's how I see it. But no, I can see I do worry about it interrupting the process, but I think for me the pros outweigh the cons because it might interrupt the process, me chatting to someone or having to if they say requests, and I'm just like, I don't really want to do that. Or feeling I need to entertain. But I think that's outweighed by the fact of the accountability and just being there. I can't, like I said, I can't be distracted, not by anything other than the people there. So if I write music, I'm like, I'm there. I'm kind of in the moment, and I can literally, there's a timer on the top of the thing. So I know if I sit there for 20 minutes and I feel like I'm done, it's like, no, I got to like spend a bit more time trying to do something. So it's good. I like it for that. But yeah. So I've got one. This going back. I've got one more question, and then I'll get you to ask your pass the torch on for the next guest with your question. If you, I mentioned this briefly. So if you say you woke up sort of parallel universe and you had to create for yourself another world of things that you immerse yourself in, like another, yeah, I joked about saying there'd be, I wonder if there's sort of someone else out there with just like a whole other world of different interconnected things they like. What do you think? Where do you think that would go? It's a bit of a tricky question. I have no idea how I'd answer that question.
If I had to start from scratch and I
So
couldn't
you're not
flip
allowed to, all of the
things.
things you do now, you've got to find or create. So we're talking like music, games. When I say roller coasters, I guess what can we say? Like things to go and do. I know it sounds really simple, but like activities, it sounds really like demeaning. I know you're really passionate about it. Um, what do you think like a parallel universe you would look like?
Um, Maybe I would get, because I think any excuse to travel is
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Any good reason. So maybe I'd get really into art and I'd go around looking at all different art in the world, or
Okay. So like art enthusiast.
yeah, or like, yes, sculpture enthusiast, or something really something a bit more obscure, like you have people who are lockpick enthusiasts.
Okay.
It,
No, I
it's a
still feel like
world.
that ties in with like Skyrim and stuff. Can't
Oh,
pick that. That's
okay.
too close.
Okay, that's too close. What about or like, oh no, that is definitely, I was gonna say board games because I've, but that is definitely too close.
Art's broad
Trying to
enough
think.
that you can travel around. So okay, we need so a genre of music. So we've got like an activity or like a
Mhm.
traveling around activity thing. Need a genre of music and what was the other thing I said? I'm sure what was the other? I guess entertainment. Other
Yeah.
than like yeah, a genre of music and another form of entertainment for alternate reality. You
Um, I mean, in the genre of music stuff's tricky because I know everyone says this, but it's genuinely true with me. I do listen to lots of different genres of music,
Okay, cool.
and like I really like classical as well. Back when I worked in a record shop, I was in charge of the classical department and got super into it. Um, so I feel like if I said, "Oh, classical," and to the listeners, that'd be like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's super different." It's actually not. It's what kind of what I
Okay.
already listen to. I
So
guess
no
the
music then, I guess, is the answer.
yeah, or maybe like I don't. I'm trying to think of a genre that I'm not really into. Maybe like house music. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know anything about house music or
Okay.
listen to house music. So okay, alternate reality Serena, reverse
Art
Serena.
art collector that listens to house music. That's a kind of an odd combination. I'm not saying they can't work together. I'm just saying it's an interesting one. It doesn't feel as interwoven as your current reality. Uh,
No.
yeah. What sort of form of entertainment then? One last thing. So you've kind of got
um,
get, I suppose, gaming in the sense of games like not just in video games, but like that kind of thing. What other playing the guitar?
well, I don't watch TV much at all. Like
Okay.
I'll watch a Simpsons episode, an old. I've watched the same Simpsons episodes over and over again on
Right.
my lunch break.
Yeah.
But when people like sit there and chat, like if you see your family and they're like, "Oh, did
Mm.
you?" This is how every conversation goes. Did you see this? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, no. Did you see this? Blah 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 on the telly? No, I don't have time to watch TV. I don't even know what's on like regular TV. That is not a part of my life. So maybe alternate reality Serena would watch Love Island or something. I don't know.
I can't stand Love Island. I've watched it a couple of times, like where either I've been subjected to it or I've just thought, oh, I wonder what's going on, and I just can't. I just can't stand it. It feels like just a horrible social experiment gone terribly wrong and put on TV. Not that I'm better than it. I'm just saying it sounds. I just think that there's so many things wrong with it. I'm just like, oh, it's not for me. Um, but yeah, on that positive note, um, I'll have to get you to think of a question to launch the next podcast guest into the conversation. So you can go in whatever direction you want. I've had very deep and meaningful. I've had silly and stupid. So whatever and
Uh,
whichever question you think suits.
can I ask a question first? Who was the person who asked the
Oh,
superhero?
it was Adam from Lorna Shore.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I
I
went to
assumed you
see that.
would. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I went to see them at the Electric Ballroom a few months ago.
Oh, cool. I saw them in Birmingham, and I didn't actually know. I said this to him. I was like, I knew their music, and I knew how some of it went. I didn't really know the discography that well. But I was just stood there like looking at me and my friends just looking at each other like, what is going on? Like in the best way, like what is happening? So yeah, that was who asked your question.
Okay,
So
that's gonna feed into my
okay,
question that I'm going to ask your next guest. Then,
okay.
I presume so. They're all musicians, correct?
They're all so they're all kind of involved in. I'm trying to think who is the next. Yeah, they're all kind of involved in the music industry in some way. So it's all. I think you're pretty safe on that. Yeah, I'll let you
Okay,
know if I don't think I know who the next guest is, but then my schedule might change. So yeah.
as someone, this is my question. As someone involved in the music industry, what is your opinion of TikTok?
Oh, okay. That's a good one. I have so I mean I won't answer it myself because it kind of spoils it somewhat. But I have so what I do is with the podcast I'll get some clips from each podcast and put them on TikTok. But what I do is I catch myself just scrolling every now and again. I'm like, oh, this is just well, you know my opinion already. So yeah, but I try to post positive stuff on there. Hopefully it people watch the podcast clips and go, that's interesting. Hopefully. So also I need you to recommend an artist for the world to to promote to the world. So yeah, if
Okay.
you think of someone, ideally someone that maybe doesn't get the recognition they deserve, but anyone.
Oh,
Or it
okay.
can
I
just be
mean,
someone that's done something cool recently. If you think it's cool that Metallica are in Stranger Things, you can say Metallica.
I don't think anything Metallica have done is cool. Sorry.
Oh, okay. You're honest on that one.
um, apart from Fade to Black, that is a good ballad.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
give
I
them
like a
that.
lot of Metallica.
Sorry,
That's all right.
it's testament all the way for me when it
Okay,
comes
cool.
to classic thrash. Anyway,
Mhm.
avoiding that, I've just alienated like your entire audience there. Sorry.
No, it's all right.
um, uh, the Fellowship, the power metal band from the UK,
Cool.
released their debut album this today called The
Nice.
Saberlight Chronicles, and it is the best power metal album you will ever hear.
Okay.
And the lyrics are great. They're not about dragons; they're about mental health. And
Okay.
it's basically, I think I described the album on Twitter as like being enveloped in a hug from a plush velvet cloak. Um,
Wow. Okay, that sounds pretty good. It's not what I would first think of when I think of power metal descriptors, but it still works. So I'm on board with that. Awesome. Do you say fellowship or the fellowship?
Fellowship.
Fellowship. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, hopefully. And do you have anything you want to plug to the world um to finish up or?
Let me just try and think. So UK wise, Svalbard are playing Dominion Festival, Kendal Calling, Sheffield Boiler Room in September,
Cool.
and the Electric Ballroom with Mono. So we've got some UK shows coming up. And Noctule, my solo project, is playing the Black Heart in Camden to celebrate Church Road Records' 5th anniversary on Saturday, the 6th of August.
Awesome. That's cool. That's the I'm trying to think when this will be out. You might be a bit behind on the 6th of August one. So I
Uh,
have to keep these backed up because I do two a week and it's like, oh, I don't know if I can I book them all myself. So it's like I don't know if I can keep up. So yeah, but hopefully we'll catch a few of them after this. But yeah. So yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It was lovely to talk to you.